This podcast is brought to you by Most Valuable Podcasts, leading the league in podcasting entertainment.
What's going on, real MVPs, and welcome inside another episode of What's Your Fantasy? I'm Brandon Swanson, and across the table from me is a man living the dream right now because he is off for the summer, Ricky Widmer.
Yeah, you know, school is out for the summer, but the one thing, Brandon, I got breaking news.
Breaking news?
Breaking news from the lifestyle of Ricky Widmer. After this weekend, so after the fast break, really I think the Rick and Johnny podcast will be the last podcast I do this weekend. This lovely beard that it seems like the only people who like it are Dave and myself, because my mom wants me to shave it. Sean says I look like a leprechaun. You told me I need to shave it. Mark really hasn't expressed an opinion, so I'm going to say Mark's on the side of he's pro beard. But after this weekend, for reasons, the beard will need to be shaved, and I am kind of very sad about that because this took a lot of work. This was in October to now June grow job on the beard for Ricky Widmer, the longest I've ever had my beard.
Yeah, I think it's time to go. I think it's time to go for the beard.
You're not a facial hair guy, though.
I'm not. I mean, the little bit that I've got right here, that's like me. That's like me letting it go. I'm gonna probably shave it tomorrow morning.
Yeah, where I am, this is the longest I've had it go, and it's actually, I think, filled in nicely, except it's gotten a little curly here on the edge.
It's filled in for sure, but it's got to go.
Yeah, and
it's summertime.
It's one of those
you got to
where
get rid of the beard for summertime.
It's fun having the beard, but after this weekend, the beard will be no more. Don't know if I'll grow it back. Probably will. Probably won't. We don't know.
Probably won't. That's not an answer.
Yeah, I don't know yet. That's what I'm telling
probably
you.
Will. Probably won't.
Probably will.
I don't
probably
know.
Won't. I'm very influenceable. I grew this one out because of two reasons. Dave told me to, and I had my students that I teach go, you should grow out your beard. So I said, fine, I'll grow out my beard this year, and that's the result of it. So, you know, peer pressure leads to this. And we're going to be talking about a guy who's got a killer beard himself.
He does.
Better than my own.
He does, indeed. So before we get into everything is if you want to support this podcast and all the podcasts here on MVP, please check out patreon.com. Become a patron. For just $1 a month, you can do that. Certainly, we love to have more than $1 a month, but we're trying to do some really good things here, some bigger things, some better things, trying to get our own studio, as we have been generously given this one as basically a lease space.
Thank you,
which
Pete.
We certainly do enjoy, but we want to be able to have our own place, and with your help and support, we will be able to do that. So again, patreon.com, and you can become a patron today, right now. So Ricky, before we dive into everything, I will throw it over to you to give an update on where we're at in the world of fantasy.
So for our fantasy baseball league that is going on right now, I've basically made some changes to our team because before we get into standings and where we are, and I mentioned that our team's under a little bit of a crisis, Brandon. And I say that because we have 3 injuries, and I could only put one of them in our IL spot. We've got basically Fernando Tatis has been on the IL for, I think, longer than the IL 10 days that they have him listed as. D. Gordon is also now on the IL 10 days, and also George Springer on the IL 10 days. That's our entire bench and IL spot. So I've had to make some changes in the world of fantasy for us. Not only last week while we were recording the podcast, I picked up Gerard Dyson and dropped Max Fried. Dyson hasn't been doing well, so I'm thinking about dropping him.
Max Fried,
again.
Isn't he like one of the better pitchers, though, in baseball?
We've got enough of them, though. We've got enough starters to where I needed to drop one of our pitchers to help us out in the batting because we lost George Springer, we lost D. Gordon, we lost Fernando Tatis. And then this week, Miguel Franco from the Phillies hasn't been doing well. Dropped him, picked up Kevin Kiermaier because we need stolen bases, and he's got 10 of them on the year, I believe. Then Jason Hayward has been struggling, hey, Jason, thanks for the help when I picked you up. I dropped Jason Hayward for a White Sox, the first White Sox ever to be on our team. I'm going to screw up his first name. Larry Garcia. He's got 7 stolen bases. So I'm trying to target that stolen bases while keeping a good average, because our average has just tanked since the 3 players of Gordon, Springer, and Tatis have been injured. Our average has just dropped. So that's where we are for our team. Plus, I will say there's a day or two where I forgot to switch around our pitchers to make sure all the probables were in. So we've dropped a little bit. We were at about 84.5, 85. Now we're at 78. So I know you're thinking, oh no, hit the panic button. Everything is falling. We are now up because it used to be up from 78 to 58. But I will say, the stats man, Eric Kwan, making some moves. He made some free agent moves. The gap is closing, Brandon. It is 78 to 63. We're still up by, I would say, a comfortable margin. But if these 3 players stay injured for a while, we might have to make some changes for our team moving forward.
Well, it is still a month, just about a month before the All-Star break, and I think we're in a good spot, but the reason I say that is we still have so much more season left to go.
And the reason, I know you said, Max Fried, wasn't he one of the better pitchers? You want to know where we're at in the pitching categories? Everything but saves, we're the number 1 ranked team, and in saves, we're number 2. So we're fine pitching. It's hitting where it's we're number 1 in ribbies, we're number 3 in runs and home runs. Then it's where we tank. We've got 6 points. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We're 4th place in stolen bases, 5th place in average. So we have fallen on the average front, and I'm trying to boost that up with the guys that I picked up.
For sure. Hey, you know what? I'm going to trust in your judgment.
Trust the process.
I can't do the same thing in fantasy football. I have to have a little bit more of a control and grasp on that. But I trust in what you're doing right now,
Lucas
big man.
Giolito is a free agent?
Get him now. Get him right now. Get him right now.
Who do we drop?
Anybody. Get him right now.
Who do you want to drop on our pitcher front? We've got, so here's our starting pitchers. Max Scherzer, Justin Verlander, Cole Hamels, Ryu from the Dodgers. I was going to mess up his name. Caleb Smith, Domingo Germán, and Matthew Boyd.
Drop Matthew Boyd, pick up Giolito.
So drop the Tiger for Giolito?
Yeah.
All right. Brandon, I usually don't pick him up now. So we've now got Giolito on our team.
Good.
So starting tomorrow, we'll be able to put Giolito in our rotation.
Good.
When he's a probable.
AL pitcher of the month for May. This guy's studding out right now.
That's why I said, I'm like, he's a free agent, because in his last 3 games alone, 9, 10, and 9 strikeouts. He's given up 3 runs in those 3 games, and he's gone the distance, 8 innings, and then 7 1/3 in his last 3 games.
He is solid.
And now he's on the What's Your Fantasy team. So now we've got 2 White Sox on our team, and Brandon's very happy now that's 2 White Sox to only 1 Cub in Javi Baez. But I think Javi Baez outweighs.
2 Cubs. Cole Hamels is the second.
Oh, I forgot Cole Hamels. So, okay, we've got a batter and a pitcher.
Now it's even.
Yeah.
Now it's even.
Well, and we also have a former Cub in Daniel Vogelbach, who recently has not been doing good average-wise.
No.
And he's been one where I'm like, maybe I drop you now. Maybe I drop you. I had you for the hot streak, but we'll have to see when it comes to Vogue.
He's pretty good at home runs, but average is no bueno.
Yeah, he's like, what, $150, I think, in the last 7 days. So we'll see. But that is our fantasy update for fantasy baseball.
All right, Ricky. Well, thank you very much. The first topic that we're going to dive into today is a topic that has now, with the draft being pretty much done and kind of passed, is where are these 2 big names going? And that is Craig Kimbrel and Dallas Keuchel. So a big reason why I think that teams were not going for them is because they'd have to give up a draft pick. teams didn't want to do that. They did not want to lose a draft pick to get one of these guys. They wanted to keep that. They wanted the draft to pass, and then they wanted to be able to go after these two very hot names as of right now. So the first one that I want to start with is Craig Kimbrel, the former Boston closer, huge pitcher for Boston, one of the most locked down back-end pitchers in the bullpen that I think that there is around right now. Even though he's not on a team, I still think he's one of the best ones. If a team picked him up, they automatically are better by +5 at least in that category. Craig Kimbrel recently, today, as of today when we're recording this, Wednesday, June 5th, was reportedly, due to sources, the Cubs were pushing hard for him. The Chicago Cubs were pushing hard for him. Also, the Minnesota Twins very much eyeing Craig Kimbrel with speculation that, and again, just speculation, that Craig Kimbrel may very well land with the Minnesota Twins. Ricky, my question for you with Craig Kimbrel is, where do you think he should and will most likely be going? And then what team do you really think he should be with? And how much help can he give to that team? And then also, how big does he turn into then in terms of fantasy land? How big of a factor is he once he gets on a team, and how many people are going to try and scoop him up?
Yeah, well, the first thing, because the thing that's always interesting with these when they come to baseball is they're two very different worlds, where if you're going to look at where he wants to go, throw fantasy out the window, because of course players aren't looking at that. The Cubs would be a nice option. Like, I'm not going to do the homer thing of like, oh, he should sign with the Cubs. But the Cubs would be a nice option. They've been a team that's a playoff team. We've hit our stride right now. Now it's basically what we all thought, us battling with the Brewers for the top of the Central. And we're a team that needs bullpen help.
And I was saying, for the Cubs, they're a team that they certainly have the hitting, but to make it over that hump, and I'm not saying the Cubs are down at all, but to get to where they want to be, they need a guy like Craig Kimbrel to be a really good force in the back end of that bullpen. So let's say the Cubs get Kimbrel, then you move Pedro Strop into a setup role, which I think is more of his natural role as opposed to closer. And then you have a pretty good back end of that pen. Yeah,
and the thing that I'm looking at, too, when it comes to Kimbrel, when I look at teams, is, so the article I was looking at today from Buster Only mentioned teams like the Phillies, the Twins, the Yankees, the Rays, the Braves, and the big thing, the Astros being the last one. The thing I'm looking at is when it comes to Kimbrel, because now you've got basically the pick of, hey, I've waited this long, I can kind of see where teams are at. It blows my mind. We're a month away from the All-Star game and then the trade deadline and basically the halfway point of the season. And I look at the standings, and the Cubs would be a good one, but you know the Cubs are going to be in a battle with the Brewers for the division. And there could be a possibility the same thing that happened last year happens this year, where the Brewers and Cubs have to play a one-game playoff for the division. Then the loser of that game, which will probably be the Cubs because the Brewers always have our number the last 2 years. Thank you, Christian Yelich. Then the loser of that game has to play the wild card game, and you're basically playing 2 one-game playoffs. Whereas I look at the other teams, the Phillies are interesting because, and I say interesting on a bad side because of the McCutchen injury that happened to them. I don't think they are going to be, like, they're not going to fall off the face of the earth. But if I'm Kimbrel, I look at the Braves now as more of a force because the Braves are only a half game back of that division. I would sign maybe with the Braves over the Phillies, although I do like the Phillies having Arrieta, having Nola, so that I can get save opportunities. The other one I would like is the Twins, and the reason why, they're 10.5 games above the second place Cleveland Indians team, to where if you want stability if you want basically stability of making the playoffs, you're going to sign with the Astros or the Twins. If you want to be on a team that maybe has the name recognition, you'll sign with the Yankees or the Cubs. And then on the outside, I would say is like a team like the Braves, who, yes, they may be in a fight with the Phillies for that division, but if they make the playoffs, even with Kimbrel, how much of a playoff team are they going to be, and are they going to make it all the way? These are things that would be circling in my mind if I was Craig Kimbrel.
So, again, to the Minnesota Twins, and what you just said, they are 10.5 games up
on the Indians
in the division on the Cleveland Indians, and then even more so on everybody else. The way that Minnesota has played this year, I think, has stunned a lot of people. It stunned me. I did not think that they were going to be this good. I thought that they'd be maybe third in the division this year, to be honest with you, but they have some guys who can smoke the baseball, that is for sure. So their offense is outstanding, and then you look at their bullpen already. They've had awesome performances this year so far from Trevor May, who's been acting as their closer, Taylor Rogers, Blake Parker, and others. So you put Kimbrel in there, and the Minnesota Twins have a dangerous, even more so dangerous bullpen and team than what they had before. So the Minnesota Twins, if they get Craig Kimbrel, they're automatically, not that they aren't already right now, they're automatically a favorite for that AL Central, and they're running away with it right now. They could continue to do so. I mean, we could be looking at 15, 17 games by the time the All-Star game rolls around if, they add a guy like Craig Kimbrel. One of the things, though, is I believe he's still looking for a multi-year deal. Do you think that that's going to be a hang-up for teams who just say, we want you to come and play for us the rest of this year. We'll give you a 1-year contract for $8 million, $10 million, whatever they end up doing. But we'll then talk long-term after we see what you've got and what you do for us. Do you think that's going to be a hang-up with any of these teams?
The thing is, I think of the Cubs when I think of that. And the reason why is, think of things like the Chapman deal. Make the deal, the trade for Chapman. Did we pay him? No. Like, the Cubs are not going to be a team that just spends money to spend money. They're very smart. And it's like, if you are, and I mean, Kimbrel is, 31? So that's kind of an older player. It's not like you're 25, 26, and it's like, damn, we want to lock you down. Like, let's say multi-year B, are you thinking like, and I know this is going into the head of Kimbrel, would you think 3-year?
2 to 3.
So 2 to 3. That means if I lock you down, like a team like the Cubs or the Yankees or even like the Astros, that's manageable because it's like, okay, I'm getting you for the rest of this year, which is 31, and then I get you for 32 because his birthday just happened. It's at the end of May. If it's 3 or more, then we get into some sticky territory. Like if you're looking for a 3 to 4 year deal, then it's like, okay, I'm getting you for 31, 32, 33, and then maybe 34, and we're getting deeper into those 30s. That's why I maybe look at a team like Atlanta, where they may be a team where, hey, we're young already. We can throw you that 3rd year if you want it because we're not really that we're not really that conscious about, I even said it wrong still.
Conscious.
That word. We're not really worried, I should say, about your age because the rest of our team is so young, whereas a team like the Cubs and the Yankees might be looking at it and saying, I don't know. I don't know if I want to give you that 3rd year because you're already 31 years old this season.
Yeah, I mean, I completely understand that. I just wonder really, and kind of talking out loud, and that's why I kind of asked the question, is that going to be a hang-up for other teams where they're going to get into some contract negotiations and a team's going to say, okay, we'll do a year, and Kimbrel's going to be going and his agent are going to be saying, I want 2 to 3 or 2 with a player option for a 3rd.
Yeah.
I mean, all of that stuff, and that's where I think it's interesting, especially when you bring in age.
Or the 2 years and the double option on the 3rd, where it's like, even if the team says no, I can still say yes if I want to.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that what a team also is having to go on is that what the Craig Kimbrel you get is going to be exactly what Craig Kimbrel was last year in the playoffs. And what he ended up doing for the Boston Red Sox to help get them to another World Series championship. You have to basically go off of that. Just like in football, the Jets are going to have to go off the fact that, hey, Le'Veon Bell was out for an entire year. We're hoping we get the guy that he was before that. So, I mean, it's a little bit of a risk. Our guys, they come out, they're working out and stuff like that, but they're not in game action, in game situations. Kimbrel could come out and no longer be all that great at closing because he's been off for so long, hasn't been in the game situations. Now, is that likely? Not really. But could it happen? Anything could. So that's why I find that to be interesting. Ricky, if you don't have any more thoughts on Kimbrel, I wanted to move over to the starting pitcher.
I got one thought on Kimbrel. The one we didn't get to is the last question you asked me of fantasy.
Yeah.
How does it affect his fantasy? Because we're doing a fantasy podcast. And
is that what this is?
The thing that I think about is my first thought was, if I was a fantasy owner, let's say you picked up Craig Kimbrel already.
I'm saying the same thing. Really tough to say that.
I'm having a weird saying his first name is Craig. Craig Kimbrel. If you already pick him up, because there might be people that are like, oh, the rumors are starting, I'm going to pick him up now and just hold him. I did the same thing with Keuchel earlier in the season. We drafted him with our last pick thinking that he was going to sign right when the season started. The two teams that I looked at right away was like, please sign here if I'm on fantasy. Number one is Philly. And the reason why I say Philly is you look at their main two starting pitchers of Nola and Arrieta, go deep into ball games. He's going to get save situations in those situations. Also, Hector Neris is their leading saves guy at 11. I believe if Kimbrel comes in, he is then the closer. Hector gets bumped to maybe a setup role or that option 2 in the closing game. The other one was the Houston Astros, because they've got 3 guys that have gone 70 innings or above so far in their 12 to 13 starts. The only thing that I look at them is you've already got Roberto Ozuna out there. Would Kimbrel bump Ozuna? Like, little question in the middle of mine that I'll ask you. If he signs with the Astros, Kimbrel is the closer, and then Ozuna gets bumped to maybe a setup man or that option 2 closer, correct?
Oh, he's got to be.
Yeah.
I don't think the Astros go for Kimbrel if they're not going to make him their closer.
Like, you don't think
Kimbrel wants to close.
Do you think Ozuna, though, would impede on some of Kimbrel's save opportunities? Like, for example, if Kimbrel goes to the Yankees, I don't want him in fantasy because basically it's going to be him and Chapman fighting for save opportunities, which I get why the Yankees want Kimbrel, because in the playoffs, basically, if your pitcher can go 7 innings, even if he can go 6, you can give basically one of those 2 guys 2 innings, or if they go basically 7, give Chapman an inning, give Kimbrel an inning, and you're unstoppable in the playoffs. But like, from a fantasy output, if he goes to like the Yankees, he's not going to get as many saves because you've still got to roll this Chapman out there who's going to be getting save opportunities as well. Do you think Ozuna in Houston does the same thing to Kimbrel's numbers and combats him for save opportunities?
I don't think so. I think that Ozuna would, and it may be I don't think that they would do this. I was going to say at that point, the Astros have a trade chip if they wanted to, if they needed to. Ozuna. But Kimbrel's not going anywhere where he's not going to close.
Yeah,
he's not. He's not going to. He's not going anywhere that he will not be closing. So he's honestly not going to land with the Yankees because.
A roll to Chapman.
Why would he want to be there with Chapman as well? And then why would Chapman want Kimbrel coming in and impeding on his job?
And that's
Kimbrel's gonna go to a spot like the Cubs or the Twins. Those where it makes the most sense.
And that's what I was gonna say. The 2 spots fantasy wise where Kimbrel will do the best are the Cubs and the Twins, because right now the Cubs, if you look at their top 2 save guys, Pedro Strop and Steve Cishek, basically 2 guys that are not closers. Like, Strop is our setup guy. Cishek is a either late reliever or a setup guy in himself. Neither of them are closers, even though I know Strop has taken on the closing role when we didn't have a Chapman, when we don't have a Craig Kimbrel. And then the Twins, yeah, they've got Blake Parker, but Blake Parker's not your closer, really. And then Taylor Rogers has 5, but if you get Kimbrel, it's not like either of those two guys are going to impede Kimbrel for save opportunities. Kimbrel becomes your main closer and your save guy. So fantasy-wise, I would say the decision becomes you want him signing with the Cubs or the Twins if you want the most out of Craig Kimbrel, with the Astros being maybe a sneaky third team where you can still have success on in fantasy.
Completely agree. Now, moving on to the starting pitcher, Dallas Keuchel. It has been talked about and rumored that his most likely landing spot is to the New York Yankees.
Okay.
And that, in my mind, is huge for the Yankees because of, if nothing else, Luis Severino. He has been a big hole while the Yankees are still in first place and they're still doing well.
They've managed to stay in first place with all those injuries.
They've done an outstanding job.
I know we've talked about it before.
They've done an outstanding job. It's the Yankees.
It blows my mind. Like Jake, one of our patrons, is a Yankees fan, and he's like, I can't wait for these guys to be healthy towards the playoffs because they're just going to roll.
They should. They should, but they've done, I feel like they've, for the most part, pretty much rolled with the guys that they've got, even with the injuries. So it's been really outstanding what the Yankees have been able to do, but Dallas Keuchel could come in and really fill a void that they clearly do have. Even though that they've, got Herman in there and they've got Paxton that's in there. Even though he was injured, he was on the IL for a little bit. Tanaka. Having Dallas Keuchel, another veteran, coming in there, I think that could just really help them to continue to work towards where they would like to be. That's it. That'd be a huge signing. But again, I think Dallas Keuchel is a guy who's going to want 3 to 5 years. I don't think he's getting a 3 to 5 year contract. He also is 31.
He's not. And that's just the thing of, with everything and where we're at, you're not going to get those big time contracts from those. I'll take it this way. The Bryce Harper thing. Bryce Harper was not going to get the contract he wanted from the Cubs because the Cubs are a team like the Yankees. We are in playoff contention. How do you stay in playoff contention? Worry about how you're going to pay the guys that you have to pay already when they come up. You're not going to get that 10-year deal that Bryce Harper got. So it's like with Keuchel, it's almost like the only way you're going to go to a Yankee team is if you're taking a 1-year contract, maybe a 2-year contract, because the team doesn't want to have a huge contract looming over it if things go bad. They want it to okay, we didn't make it work. Now you're expendable, to basically, we can just let you walk away, rather than saying, oh, fuck, we're stuck with Dallas Keuchel because we thought it was going to work here in the playoffs.
No, I think you're right. But that's, again, too, where Dallas Keuchel has to, and I think his agent is Scott Boras. That's where they're also going to have to, I think, give a little bit. It's got to be that give and take on both sides. He's not going to get, I don't think, the exact perfect deal that he thought he was going to get in free agency, which I'm still surprised that did not happen. But, he's another one where 2 to 3 years may be what he gets with some really good front loading in terms of his contract.
And the thing that I'll ask you is, based off of just the amount of games and stuff, how I would look at the stats and kind of rank them in a playoff situation is that right now I would say Tanaka's your number 1. Then you've got Domingo Germán as your number 2. J.A. Happ's your number 3, with maybe a number 4 being the situational CC or James Paxton being that 4th spot. If Keuchel signs with the Yankees, he instantly becomes the second starter, right? It's basically Tanaka, Keuchel, and then Germán? Or could it be a situation of, in a playoff situation, he becomes that third starter so that it's, let's say, for example, they got to go on the road, or vice versa, they're at home. basically if they're on the road in the playoffs, road, and then you get Keuchel that first game at home, or home, that first road game you get Keuchel. Which one do you see? Him being the second, or him being, hey, we're going to put Herman third, and Keuchel will be that third starter off in the rotation?
I'd see him second. I really would. I would see him second. I mean,
just to hit you with the Tanaka Keuchel punch.
It could be. It could, but at the same. I mean, again, I like James Paxton. I think he's pretty good. When healthy, I think he's pretty good. But you don't go and get Keuchel if you don't believe that he's going to be one of your guys down the stretch. That makes no sense to me. So that's where I would think even. But also, we've seen times where Tanaka struggles. So is it a Keuchel Paxton? Is it a Paxton Keuchel? I mean, Masahiro Tanaka, while very good at times, is awful at other times. I mean, I understand that's kind of how it goes.
Especially when he throws. I believe he was on the mound when the video I saw this morning of threw it right down the middle of the plate. That's a ball. That's a ball. Did you see that video from the Yankee game? I think it was from last night's game. I think it was Tanaka who was on the mound. Ball goes right down the middle. You see it on the cast, right at the knees, well in the zone, and the ump didn't move. And even Sanchez, the catcher, ready to throw it back, and he stops and goes, "Wait, what? That was a ball? That was a ball?" So one of those really bad calls. I'll have to show it to you after the podcast.
That's crazy. But I wonder with him sometimes is, he's their ace. He's. I don't know.
You're saying it's fluid.
I guess I'm just saying I don't know if maybe his best days are behind him.
So you're saying it's fluid.
It could be.
It could be basically whoever's throwing the rock the hardest. Keuchel, Paxton, or Tanaka could then be it gives them the flexibility to have any one of those guys be the game one starter in the playoffs.
Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying.
Or also, I like it too for the Yankees because let's say Tanaka finishes a series game 7, then Keuchel can pitch your game 1 for you, and you don't have to worry about, we had to throw our best guy out there in game 7, and now we've got a less than stellar guy in game 1 also.
Yeah. No, exactly. I completely agree with that. My next question to you, Ricky, would be kind of how we did with Kimbrel, going from the fantasy perspective of things. Dallas Keuchel, he goes to a team, and let's say it's the Yankees. Dallas Keuchel has been probably one of the better pitchers in baseball over the last couple of years. However, he did have that year, I want to say, was it 1 or 2 years ago, where he really struggled for the Houston Astros. But outside of that, he's been probably one of the more consistent pitchers that we've certainly seen in baseball. How do you think that affects fantasy?
See, the thing that's different here in the Dallas Keuchel conversation compared to Craig Kimbrel is, as a closer, you're very reliant on who else is in that starting rotation. Because if the starters aren't enough, if the team's not good enough to give you a lead in the 9th, you're not going to be in safe situations. Where I look at the Yankees, and really there's only one category. If we're going off of the standard of strikeouts, wins, saves, ERA, and WHIP, strikeouts, ERA, and WHIP, that's all on Keuchel. Basically, no matter which team he goes to, I know that it then depends on, what would he do against different divisions? Like for the Yankees, what would he do against the Rays? What would he do against the Red Sox? Whereas, let's say he's going to the Twins. I'm just throwing them out there. That's the Indians, the White Sox. Of course, the AL Central would be a little bit easier than the AL East. The big one is that wins category. And I feel like with the Yankees, let's say during the regular season, let's say they slot him into that 3rd slot. So let's say regular season rotation, you've got Tanaka number 1, you've got Herman number 2, then you have Dallas Keuchel. That might aid Dallas Keuchel in his fantasy numbers, especially wins, because you're going up usually then, unless it's like a weird day off situation, you're usually going up against the maybe 3rd, 4th guys in rotations for other teams. That means Yankees are probably going to win those games. Yankees are probably going to be better at scoring runs in those games. That helps Keuchel's win percentage go up.
Yeah.
And that's where it truly aids why the Yankees would be a good fit for him if he's a guy that's maybe third in their rotation for the regular season.
Yeah. I agree. I completely agree. I think it's going to be really interesting to see what happens with these two, Craig Kimbrel and Dallas Keuchel. Mm-hmm. We shall see.
Maybe they'll sign someone and that's a good thing too with both of them waiting out is it kind of it almost reminds me of like what we're talking about with Kawhi Leonard in the NBA of like load management where he only played how many games did he play this year? I got to pull it up. As Brandon's like, Ricky, I can't help you with that one. Kawhi Leonard played out of the 82, he played 60 games this year. So the big thing and the thing I'm relating it to this is you've got then Kimbrel and Dallas Keuchel doing almost the same thing where they didn't have to waste their arm in April, May, in June. They only used their arm in July, August, September so that for fantasy, maybe the beginning is a little rough because they're just getting back into the motion. Mm-hmm. But after they hit a stride, you're going to get their good play for the most crucial months of the season. And then for teams in the playoffs, their arm's not going to be dead in October because they didn't use it in May and June and late April earlier in the season.
Well, that's how it should be. That's how you would think it would be, that they would come in right away and it'd be lively, it'd be fresh, it'd be really good. And that's certainly the hope that I think these other teams are looking at.
Out of them, I would be okay with slow starts because I know them by October, their arm's not going to be dead because they didn't use it for the first 3 months of the season.
Exactly. Well, now moving into our next topic, it's sticking with baseball. Mm-hmm. It is, we've seen a lot of injuries happening around baseball here lately. And just to name a few, Andrew McCutchen, Carlos Correa, George Springer, Fernando Tatis Jr., D. Gordon.
All on the last three, just our team.
I mean, there's so many injuries
Rendon was injured.
happening out there.
Back.
So it's really tough right now. And Ricky, what that was going to be your question. My question to you is, as a fantasy player, what do you do now? These guys are done. Who are you picking up? Who are you replacing these guys with? Some of them, like Andrew McCutchen, he's done for the season. And like Andrew McCutchen's done for the season. Carlos Rodon, who was having Tommy John, he's done for the season. Some of these guys who most likely would have, maybe not your ace or your number one, but certainly was going to be a guy that you had playing pretty regularly on your team. But guys like Carlos Correa, George Springer, they're most likely coming back. But what do you do until then so that when you're in a spot like us, so right now currently we're 15 points ahead, but because of these injuries, we're not 40 points ahead like we once were. Fernando Tatis Jr., D. Gordon, I mean, these guys are solid pieces for not only their own teams, but certainly for fantasy teams. What do you do? We've had this discussion, I feel like, a little bit already, but when is too long to continue to hold on to them? And what guys are you looking at and going and picking up?
So for our personal league, and our league is different because I wanted a 10th team. We couldn't get that 10th team, so that's why we're at 9 teams. And some of the guys I may mention early on may not be available in your league because they're only available in ours because we don't have that 10th team to suck up roster spots. But the top free agent in our league is Mike Moustakas. And he's a guy.
I don't know how he's a free agent.
He's a guy that's owned in 97% of leagues. You know who owned him originally and dropped him?
Who's that? Oh, why'd you get rid of him?
We dropped him in the early season because he sucked early on.
Okay.
He was absolutely horrible. And I was like, I can't have him tanking our average.
Can't have it.
Well, and that's the thing with Moose. And I know that I won't spend too much time because you're going to say, Ricky, he's only available in 3% of leagues. Like, he's not available. Move on. But the reason why I've been iffy about picking him back up is, like, since May 30th, he went 4 for 6 against the Pirates and had 2 runs, 2 home runs, and 4 ribbies, but then went 1 for 4, 1 for 4, 0 for 4. So it's like, I'm not getting that consistency. The guys that I look at that are, and the kind of bar I'm using is they are owned in less than 80% of fantasy leagues. These are some of your top guys right now. And I'll kind of ask you if any of these guys kind of wet your whistle, per se. You've got Austin Riley, third baseman and outfielder from the Atlanta Braves. Nick Senzel, second baseman outfielder from the Cincinnati Reds. Hunter Pence of the Texas Rangers. Jonathan Scoop from
Scope.
Scope.
I think that
I like saying Scoop.
Jonathan Scope, I think, is having a much better year so far this year in Minnesota than he did.
Your fake cousin, Dansby Swanson, also.
Dansby Swanson. I'm a big fan of Dansby Swanson. I think he's a good young player.
I mean, that's the big thing. Where eventually I'm going to get to the point where, for us, because let's see the situation. We've got Tatis, who's an infielder. We've got basically Tatis and D. Gordon are infielders, shortstop, second baseman, and then Springer being the outfield guy. Eventually, I'm going to look at it and be like, okay, who do we need to pick up? Because, I mean, that's the thing. Like George Springer, I'm not going to drop him if he's not out for the year. But for example, let's say you have Andrew McCutchen, and Andrew McCutchen is out for the year. Let me go over to outfielders really quick on my tablet. That means you're kind of looking at, all right, like even if you're in the 82%, a Nick Markakis might be still available. A Max Kepler might be still available.
Max Kepler, he's good.
Like he's 86.8% of leagues. That's because about 20% of people have added him recently, so he's been going up. But he's a guy recently, since the end of May, has not had a hit. May 31st, 0 for 5, then 0 for 4, 0 for 4, 0 for 1 today as we're recording. So, I mean, he hasn't been doing great as of late, but overall he's a great guy. Austin Riley, he's a guy that has only had 2 hits since May 31st, but in that game against Pittsburgh, he went 1 for 4, but had 3 runs in that game, one of them being off a home run, and the home run was a 3-run blast. So you get that kind of numbers from him. It's just kind of picking and choosing who you're going to be. But the big one to me is if you have Andrew McCutchen, you're sitting there going, well, shit, I got to find somebody or maybe play around and find a group of guys that I can kind of cycle into that outfield spot to give me the production that I'm now going to lose with McCutchen being injured.
Yeah, I think that's really where you have to look at it. And I think, again, my guy who I'd probably be looking at is Jonathan Scope. I do think that he's...
You liked him in the offseason, too.
He's on the Minnesota Twins. They've been such a hot team. He's been part of that hot hitting with them. So there's definitely, I think, some good things in there.
Because the thing that you're going to have to look at, and you want to know what's funny, it's not funny because he's injured, but it's just humorous because of our league. Guess who in our league has Andrew McCutchen? Kyle.
Okay.
Who, last time we talked about Kyle because he's got Aaron Judge. So he's basically all the players on Kyle's team are getting injured. But if you've got Andrew McCutchen, he had 45 runs for you so far this year. Where are you going to find that production? And I think that's what you got to look at more importantly is, so for example, for us, D. Gordon is a stolen base guy. Had to find some guys that can give us that stolen bases because we're already down on that. George Springer, he's going to give you ribbies and home runs. I need to find someone that's going to kind of give us the same thing there. You look at Andrew McCutchen, 45 runs this year and about a 250 average. You got to try to find someone who consistently is going to give you that kind of a number. And there might be a situation where it's like you have to pick one. Okay, do I want someone who has a really good average but is not going to give me that 45 ribbies? Or maybe someone who's like, okay, he's close to that 45 ribbies, but the average is like a 225 instead of a 250, which may bring down your average, and depending on where you are, may bring you down a point or two, depending on where the other teams are with their average. So, I mean, it's really playing at that. But I think that out of the ones that I'm looking at outfield-wise, Riley would be one that if you're just trying to plan for ribbies and don't really care about average, go after him. But if you're kind of sitting there going, I want to go for average, you might have to go down that list and pick a guy that might not have a sexy name to help you out.
And you know what? That's where we start to get to the point, and with all these injuries, you start to get to the point where you're going after guys where you're thinking... You're
just trying to find the guys with the hot weeks.
Who is this? And are they going to be... And they may not be somebody who you even keep for a long time. They may just be a 1 week, couple of day, 2 week type of fill-in guy, but you need to be able to go and find them.
So I'll list off this. These are the guys that from ESPN leagues have the highest ad ratio as of today. So 39% of people are adding Derek Dietrich from the Cincinnati Reds. He's a guy that right now on the year is giving you about 269, 24 runs, 17 homers, 37 ribbies, and a stolen base. So he's that guy. Maybe if you have a Springer, Dietrich might not be that sexy name. Yeah, he plays for the Reds, but he's going to give you more ribbies and home runs to kind of supplement what you're losing.
Derek Dietrich has been very solid this year.
The next guy down, David Fletcher of the LA Angels, 316 average, and this is on the year too. So you'll have to go in and look maybe how they're doing this past week, kind of guess if they're going to get out of that slump or not. But he's got a 316 average, 32 runs, only 4 home runs, 22 ribbies, 5 stolen bases. So he may be a guy you target if you had McCutchen. He's still going to give me runs, not as many as McCutchen, but I'm not basically losing the bank there. Number 3, I'm only going to do the top 5. Number 3, Hunter Pence, 295 average, 34 runs, 11 home runs, 39 RBIs, 2 stolen bases. Little bit of consistency. He's not going to do one thing when it runs in RBIs, not going to do one better than the other, and he's got a pretty good average on the year. Then Austin Riley, like I said, 324, 15 runs, 9 home runs, 25 RBIs, no stolen bases. So he's kind of in that Dietrich kind of a category. And then number 5, Max Kepler, who 259 average, 37 runs, 36 RBIs, 12 home runs, and a stolen base. So he is in that Hunter Pence kind of a category of he's just going to be, nothing's going to be better than the other. He's just going to be consistently good for your team.
All right, Ricky. Well, we are going to move on to our final topic here today.
Football.
And we are not going to spend too much time on this, only because I know the Onside Kick already did talk about this as a topic. So make sure you go and check out the Onside Kick. They talked about the Lions and previewing the Detroit Lions. Well, and then go ahead.
Can
Cut me off. You usually do. Go ahead.
I was going to say, since Mark and I talked about it, can I throw the question then at you?
Please.
Basically, so what we're going to do is talk about Kerryon Johnson.
Yeah.
And kind of his fantasy value.
Yeah.
And the thing Mark and I looked at and went deep into is that this Lions team is adding a new OC. You've got Darrell Bevell coming in. He took a year off last year, but notably from 2015 to 17, or no, 2011 to 17, was with Beast Mode and the Seattle Seahawks. The thing I want to ask you, Mark and I talked about, I'll give my opinion too here after you give yours. How much is having a guy like Bevell going to help Kerryon Johnson? And can Kerryon Johnson be to Bevell's Lions offensive system what Marshawn Lynch was? Not same type of player, but I'm talking fantasy production. Marshawn Lynch was a good running back in Bevell's system. Could that aid Kerryon Johnson and his fantasy numbers this year?
No doubt. I mean, I think it will certainly help Kerryon Johnson. Kerryon Johnson should be the every game starter. I don't necessarily know if the Lions will have him because Matt Patricia is a big, we like all of our running backs and we'll probably use them all. Get out of here with that BS.
It's a Patriot thing.
It is. I don't understand it. But I think that Kerryon Johnson is going to see the majority of the carries. He's coming back. He feels good from the knee injury. Coming back from the knee injury that shortened his season last year. Last year, and he played in 10 games, 7 started, carried the ball 118 times, 641 yards, 3 TDs, 32 catches, which I think is really awesome for his first year. This guy is versatile. He can run the ball well. He can catch it out of the backfield. He started to be a bigger threat there as well. 32 catches, 213 yards, and a TD. With Darrell Bevell being the OC, I think that he's definitely going to work much more of the ground game. And what that's going to do, and it's something that Matthew Stafford has never felt ever, is there's going to be pressure taken off of him. For the longest time, Matt Stafford has been the focal point of the Lions offense. It's very obvious. I mean, it was Calvin Johnson, but it was Matthew Stafford for the longest time. But now it's hopefully going to be a very even give and take. We're going to have a really good passing game. Matt Stafford's going to be our guy. We're going to have a number of good wide receivers on the outside. Kenny Golladay is going to be a stud. Marvin Jones is not going to be hurt. We're finally going to have a tight end. This is all exciting. And then we're going to have a stud running back coming in with Kerryon Johnson. As long as Kerryon stays healthy, I think he's going to be a very good running back. So clearly you may be able to tell I'm really high on Kerryon Johnson.
He's on your fantasy team.
He's on my fantasy team, so I have high hopes. But I think that Kerryon Johnson has the potential, and I watched a lot of his games last year. I watched a lot of the games that he played.
Because you're invested. You care about your fantasy team. You're a good owner.
I'm a wonderful owner. Except last year in my big league that I have, I was 4-9. I had the worst record in the entire league, and I got a trophy that said how much I sucked.
Yeah.
So, but that's the first time I've been playing. I'm 26 years old. I've been playing fantasy football since I was in 6th or 7th grade, and this past year was the very first year in my big league that I've been in since 6th or 7th grade that I missed the playoffs.
Wow. Here's a question I want to throw your way, though. And Mark and I mentioned this as well. You mentioned the other running backs, and I know Theo Riddick there, Zach Zenner there, which, by the way, interesting fact about Zach Zenner that I found out, he scored in the 96th percentile on the MCAT, which is like the test that you take for medical school. Stuff. So it's like, wow, like he's what, a 3rd string, 4th string running back, and choosing that over the science career being the 96th percentile.
Yeah.
Smart kid, smart guy, I should say. But they added C.J. Anderson. How much is C.J. Anderson going to cut into Kerryon Johnson's load?
I don't think that C.J. Anderson is going to cut into it a ton.
Because he had success spelling Gurley when Gurley disappeared for whatever reason. Injury, yips, whatever you want to call it.
He did, but C.J. Anderson is on the decline of his career, where Kerryon Johnson is certainly, headed...
Incline, downcline.
He's really heading, just getting into his career, just starting it off. And while, Anderson will cut into it a little bit, and I don't know, because they had LeGarrette Blount, which is such bullshit last year. They had him doing goal line. It's like, no, put in Kerryon Johnson. So I don't know if they'll use C.J. Anderson at the goal line on things like that, but he'll be...
And they also, like, that old OC, new OC, we'll see how much Bevell...
I also think, though, C.J. Anderson is there as the guy who's going to be the guy who's been around the block.
The mentor, basically.
C.J. Anderson has been around. C.J. Anderson has been with the Broncos. He's been with the Rams. I think he's been with the Panthers. I mean, C.J. Anderson has been around, and he's done well. He's going to be, I think, a wonderful mentor to Kerryon Johnson. He's not going to be... C.J. Anderson's not going to be the guy. The guy is going to be Kerryon Johnson with C.J. Anderson there for, to spell and stuff like that. I still see Kerryon as a very good fantasy threat. I see him as one of the up-and-comers, certainly in the league. I mean, he was the first Lion in years to have 100 yard rushing day. And that was against the Patriots.
Now, here's the thing, the second question I was going to ask you, and I'll look up really quickly. Kerryon Johnson, I don't think he hit these numbers last year, but I just want to double check. No, he did not. He had nowhere near that so good. If we look at Marshawn Lynch, and I'm only using 2011 to 2014, those were Marshawn Lynch's best years under Bevel. Before, obviously, 2016 or 2015, he got injured. 2016 didn't play. Then 2017, he was an Oakland Raider. But if we look at those first, 4 years for Marshawn and Bevel, I want to ask you, so he averaged in those 4 years about 1,340 yards, and he averaged about, let me do the math really quick, 12 touchdowns a season. Over under Kerryon Johnson, we'll even undershoot it. Let's say a 1,200 yard season and about 10 to 11 touchdowns just on the ground for Kerryon Johnson. You can throw the passing in there because Marshawn Lynch wasn't huge on that. I know Marshawn Lynch, the most he had was almost 400 yards of receiving in that last year, the 2014 year. But for Kerryon Johnson under Bevel, fantasy perspective, over or under 1,200 yards and 11 touchdowns on the ground for him?
Under on both.
Okay.
Under for this year? Under on both for this year. I think this year he's going to have a couple of ticks over.
Does he hit 1,000?
Yeah, he's going to have a couple of ticks over 1,000 yards. And I think he probably is anywhere between 7 and 9 touchdowns on the ground. But you also, I think you have to also put in some passing, some receiving touchdowns. He had one last year against the Bears. I think that yes, Theo Riddick's there. I get that he's their pass catching back, but Kerryon Johnson proved that he could be a really nice pass catching running back out of the backfield, which is going to help him be on the field even more for every single down, as opposed to first and second down, and then they bring on the pass catching back. I think that, again, because he had 32 catches, I think he was targeted 38 or 39 times, so he caught most of the passes thrown his way and did a nice job there. So you have to account for more touchdowns. I think he'll have over 10 touchdowns total on the year with rushing and receiving. But I do want to kind of temper some of the expectations because I don't know if he'll be all the way up there for 1,200, 1,300 yards and 12 touchdowns in his first year with Darrell Bevel.
And that's interesting that you bring that up because, I mean, the thing that you also got to look at, and I compare it to Seattle, is Marshawn Lynch early on with Bevel had 1 receiving touchdown, 2, and then 4. And if you look at the roster, so I'm going to go year by year really quickly and then relate it to the Lions. In 2011, here were the leading receivers as of, I'll say, yards. Doug Baldwin, Sidney Rice, Ben Abornanu, I think I said that wrong, Golden Tate, Mike Williams, Zach Miller, then Marshawn Lynch. There were a ton of receivers that were getting the ball over Marshawn Lynch in that 2011 season. 2012, I believe it was among the same. Yeah, Sidney Rice, Golden Tate, Doug Baldwin, Zach Miller, you throw in Anthony McCoy above Marshawn Lynch. After that season, that's when we started to see the downtick with the receiving core in Seattle, which 2013, Golden Tate, Doug Baldwin, Zach Miller, Jermaine Kearse, and then Marshawn Lynch. And then the year that Marshawn Lynch had the most receiving yards he's ever had in Seattle and the most receiving touchdowns at 4, the only guys that were above him in receiving yards, Doug Baldwin, Jermaine Kearse. And I throw that in with the Lions because the one thing we talked about in the preview, they don't have a Golden Tate. Like, yes, they have Kenny Galladay, and Galladay is going to be
They don't have Golden
1.
Tate anymore. No, they don't.
Yeah, they don't have a Golden Tate. They've basically got their top 3 wide receivers are Galladay, Marvin Jones, and Danny Amendola when healthy, because he will get injured this year. I am for sure about it. They drafted T.J. Hockenson, who knows? He may be the leading receiver for this Lions team. Do you think that hurts? Does it hurt Kerryon Johnson because there could be 4 guys ahead of him? Or do you see, you know what, those names aren't nothing special. There's no way Kerryon Johnson is lower than 3rd in receiving yards on this team at the end of the year.
I mean, I don't think that he's going to end up being like a leading receiver by any means. I don't think we're looking at 600 yards.
That's probably going to be either Hockenson or Galladay.
But I mean, if he could put in about 350 yards on the through the air, as a receiver, I think that could be very reasonable. I mean, 213 receiving yards in all of the games that he played. He played in 10. He only started 7. I mean, Matt Stafford's going to probably look his way a lot. So I think that he'll definitely be involved. But Stafford also has a number of other targets, but we'll see how that offensive line holds up for them as well.
Does he play a full season this year?
Kerryon? I'm going to say yes.
Okay.
I'm going to say yes.
Because that's a good point I didn't bring up either on the preview or here, is that he only played 10 games last year, only started 7 of them.
Well, only started 7 also because they didn't have him starting for the first 3 or 4 games. But
which now he will be the starter.
Now he's going to be the unquestioned starter. Yeah. There is no LeGarrette Blount. That project was crap. We all knew it from the beginning.
Just bringing him over from the Patriots, man.
But I think that he plays a full season. Yeah, he had a knee injury, but it wasn't an ACL tear. It wasn't anything like that. I think that he's going to be coming back, and I think he's going to be coming back. Of course, he's coming back. That was stupid. But I think he's going to be bouncing back really well, and he already is feeling good. He's got a full season in him.
And I just want to throw this out, shameless plug. I love Pro Football Reference because you know what I found out that I didn't know they had on their site? I can tell you in those 4 years for Marshawn Lynch, and yet again, like you said, take it in perspective. Don't think because Bevel is with Kerryon Johnson that they're going to do the same. The points per year for Marshawn Lynch with Darrell Bevel. I'll give you how many fantasy points he had on the year, and I'll also give you his positional rank that year. 2011, 220 points. He was the 5th overall running back that year. 2012, 247 points, the 4th overall running back that year. 239, the 4th running back, and then 265, the 3rd running back. So obviously, as the receiving went up, his points went up and his numbers went up. Last question I will ask you is, I'll answer it first and I'll ask you. So the odds that he's a top 10 running back at the end of the year, I'm going to say 80% that he's a top 10 running back in fantasy this year. I'm going to say 30% that he's a top 5 running back in fantasy this year. How about you with Kerryon Johnson? Percentage that he's a top 10 back versus a top 5 back. Last year, he was in 10 games, was the 33rd overall running back in fantasy with 107. I say he will crack the top 10 this year, probably won't crack the top 5.
Percentage that he's a top 10 back, I'm going to go with 30%. And percentage that he's top 5, I'm going to go with 15.
Okay. So you're a lot lower on the top. Maybe I'm devaluing that top 10. For fantasy backs, but
I think a little bit. Is he? If you ask if you ask me if he's a top 20 back, I'm saying 100%.
Okay. How about top 15?
If you're asking me if he's top 15, 80%.
Okay. Yeah. And the thing that I'm playing into, I'll actually dumb mine down. Top 10, I'll say 65 to 70%. I'll take it down by about 10. Because here's the things I'm thinking of: new OC that's going to use him smarter. He's going to play in more games. Like let's even just I'll do it basically math version. What he played in 10 games, that was an average of about 10.7 points per game. That puts him, if he played all 16, he would have been at about 171 points for last year. So I don't know where that would have put him in positional ranking, but I can tell you that 171 wouldn't have been bad for a first year if he played all 16 last year.
Yeah. Any final thoughts, Ricky?
No, I think we had a very good podcast, and I know you're very hungry, so Brandon's going to close this out really quick because he wants to go get food.
Oh, I am starving. So that is going to wrap it up for us today. Thank you so much for watching and listening, no matter what avenue you are either watching or listening on. Thank you so much for doing it and being here. Again, if you want to support this podcast, head over to patreon.com and become a patron. You know what to do. I don't need to tell you. And again, thank you so much for watching and listening. For Ricky Widmer and Brandon Swanson saying so long, everybody, and we will talk to you soon. Take care.